You know that feeling when you're standing in Best Buy staring at two HDMI cables, one's $8, the other's 80. And the expensive one has gold-plated connectors and promises superior picture quality and richer colors and deeper blacks. You're thinking, should I spend the extra money? Is my TV missing out on something? Here's what nobody tells you about HDMI cables. That expensive cable with the gold plating and the fancy marketing, it's doing the exact same thing as the cheap one. Literally the same. And the reason why is going to change how you think about every cable you've ever bought. In the next 15 minutes, you're going to understand why digital signals don't care about gold plating, why expensive cables are one of the biggest scams in electronics, and why everything you think you know about cables is probably wrong. Picture this scenario. You just bought a new TV. Maybe it's a 65-inch 4K beauty you've been saving for. You're at the store, ready to check out. The sales guy looks at your cart and says, "Oh, you're going to need an HDMI cable for that." He walks you over to the cable section. There's a wall of options. The cheap cables are hanging on basic pegs. $5, $10. But then there are the premium ones in fancy packaging. $40, $60, $100. They've got gold-plated connectors. They promise superior signal transmission and enhanced color depth and maximum audio clarity. The sales guy picks up an expensive one. "You don't want to cheap out on cables," he says. "You spent $2,000 on this TV. You want the best picture quality, right? These premium cables have gold plating for better conductivity. They're shielded for reduced interference. They're certified for true 4K. You feel the pressure. You just dropped serious money on this TV. What's another $60 to make sure you get the full experience? So you buy the expensive cable, you take it home, you plug everything in, and the picture looks amazing. But here's what's really happening. That picture would look exactly the same with the $8 cable. Exactly the same. Because HDMI is digital, and digital signals work completely differently than you think they do. Everyone tells you that expensive cables are better quality. Your friend who's into tech says it. The sales guy insists on it. Even your dad remembers when expensive cables actually mattered. That's not what actually happens with digital signals. What really happens is either you get a perfect picture or you get nothing at all. Think about it like your internet connection. When you load a website, the data either arrives correctly or it doesn't. There's no such thing as a higher quality version of the same web page. The text doesn't get sharper if you have a fancier router. The images don't get richer colors if you pay more for your modem. It's all just data, ones and zeros. Either they arrive or they don't. And this matters because Americans spend millions of dollars every year on overpriced cables. It's not just about $60, it's about understanding that you're being played. The cable industry has convinced an entire generation that digital signals work like analog signals used to. And that fundamental misunderstanding is costing you money every time you buy electronics. It's not just about saving money either. It's about recognizing when marketing is exploiting your lack of technical knowledge. These companies know most people don't understand the difference between digital and analog, so they use the same language that used to matter with old cables. And it works because it sounds technical enough to be believable. So here's what I call the digital absolute. It's this fundamental truth about how digital signals work that changes everything. Digital transmission is binary. There's no middle ground. No kinda works or works better. With analog signals, yeah, quality could vary. A better cable could mean less interference, clearer picture, better sound. But digital is all or nothing. Think of it like a light switch. The light is either on or off. There's no such thing as the light being more on with a fancier switch. Sure, you can buy a switch with gold plating for $200, but the light doesn't care. It's getting the same electricity either way. HDMI works exactly like this. Your TV is either receiving the data or it's not. This matters because the expensive cable isn't transmitting a better version of the signal, it's transmitting the exact same ones and zeros. Your TV takes those ones and zeros and turns them into a picture. The picture is generated by your TV's processor, not by the cable. The cable is just the delivery system, and as long as the data arrives intact, the job is done. Here's a specific example. Sarah buys a new PlayStation 5. She wants the best gaming experience possible. She's at Target and she sees two HDMI cables. One is $12. The other is $50 with premium gold-plated connectors and promises optimized for gaming. Sarah thinks about how much money she just spent on the console. She buys the expensive cable. Sarah gets home. She plugs everything in. The games look incredible. She's convinced she made the right choice. But what Sarah doesn't realize is that the expensive cable is sending the exact same data as the cheap one would. The PlayStation sends digital packets. The cable carries them. The TV receives them. There's no step in that process where gold plating makes the picture better. Your brain does this because of something called the placebo effect meets expensive justification. When you spend more money on something, you expect it to be better. And your brain will actually perceive it as better even when it's identical. Back when analog cables existed, spending more could actually improve quality. We learned that pattern, and now we can't unlearn it. But the technology changed. Digital doesn't work like analog, yet we're still shopping like it does. Now here's where things get interesting. There's this pattern I call the cliff effect. With analog signals, quality degraded gradually. A worn-out cable meant a fuzzy picture. Static in the audio, visible interference. You could have a sort of working cable, but digital signals don't degrade. They fail completely or they work perfectly. The cliff effect means your HDMI cable is functioning at 100% or 0%. There's no 80%, no mostly working. It's like a bridge. You can either cross it or you can't. There's no such thing as halfway crossing a bridge. The cheap cable and the expensive cable are both bridges, and as long as they're both standing, they get you across exactly the same way. This matters because it completely changes how you should think about cable quality. With analog, you might say, this cable is good, or this cable is great. But with digital, the only question is, does this cable work? And if it works, it's delivering 100% of the signal. There's no better than 100%. The expensive cable can't give you 110%. That's not how data works. Think about downloading a file from the internet. When you download a song from Spotify, you don't get a better quality version if you have a fancier phone. The file is the file. The data is the data. HDMI is the same thing. Your TV is downloading video data from your cable box or PlayStation. The cable is just the wire carrying that download. And the download is either complete and perfect or it failed. We're talking massive amounts of data here. 4K video at 60 frames per second is about 18 gigabits per second. That's billions of bits. Every single one of those bits has to arrive correctly. And here's the wild part, they do, with even cheap cables. Because the HDMI standard is designed with error correction built in. If any bits get corrupted, the system detects it and requests a resend automatically. You never see it happen. But here's what makes this even more surprising. The gold plating that expensive cables brag about, it actually does something, just not what you think. Gold doesn't conduct electricity better than copper. That's a myth. Copper is actually a better conductor. Gold's advantage is that it doesn't corrode. It doesn't oxidize. So if you're plugging and unplugging cables constantly, or if you live somewhere humid, gold plating might make your connectors last longer. But for signal quality, gold does absolutely nothing. The signal doesn't travel through the plating. It travels through the copper wire inside. The plating is just on the connector pins, and those pins are either making contact or they're not. Gold doesn't make the contact better, it just makes it last longer before corrosion becomes an issue. Which matters for professional installations in humid environments, but for your living room, meaningless. This connects to something even deeper about how we make purchasing decisions. We use mental shortcuts. Something expensive must be better. Something with technical sounding features must be advanced. Something with gold must be premium. These shortcuts worked okay in a lot of situations, but they completely fail with digital technology. Because digital operates on fundamentally different principles than analog ever did. Now, this next pattern is particularly sneaky because it exploits your lack of technical knowledge. I call it the specification illusion. Premium cables list all these impressive specs, supports 48 gigabits per second bandwidth, certified for 8K at 60 hertzes, high dynamic range compatible, and all of that sounds important, like you need the fancy cable to get those features. But here's how it actually works. HDMI is a standard. A cable either meets the standard or it doesn't. If it's certified for HDMI 2.1, it supports all HDMI 2.1 features, period. Doesn't matter if it costs $5 or $500, the standard defines exactly what the cable must do, and if it's certified, it does it. The specification illusion makes you think that premium cables have better specs, but they don't. They have the same specs, they just advertise them more aggressively. It's like 2 bottles of water, both containing H2O. One bottle costs $1. The other costs $10 and has fancy labels saying contains 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom for premium hydration. It's the same water. The expensive one just talks about it more. This matters because people spend extra money thinking they're getting capabilities they need. My TV supports HDR, so I need an HDR cable. But any HDMI cable that meets the standard supports HDR. The cheap one. The expensive one. Doesn't matter. The standard guarantees it. You're paying extra for marketing, not functionality. Think about Mike. Mike's setting up a home theater. He's got a 4K TV, a sound bar, and an Apple TV. He reads online that he needs high-speed HDMI cables for 4K. He goes on Amazon. He sees cables ranging from $8 to $200. Mike figures he should get something in the middle. He spends $40 per cable. 3 cables, he's out $120. Mike's system looks great, sounds great, he's happy, but Mike could have spent $24 total on 3 cheap cables and gotten the exact same result. Identical picture, identical sound. The expensive cables aren't doing anything extra. They're just certified for the same standard. And the standard is what matters, not the price, not the marketing, just whether the cable meets HDMI's requirements. Here's what nobody wants to admit. The cable companies know this. They absolutely know that their expensive cables don't improve picture quality. But they also know that most consumers don't understand digital signals. So they use language that sounds technical. Enhanced signal integrity, reduced jitter, optimized impedance, all real technical terms. But none of them matter for a 6-foot HDMI cable in your living room. What's actually happening is you're being marketed to using your own lack of knowledge against you. The companies aren't technically lying. Gold plating does resist corrosion. The cables do support the specs they claim, but they're implying benefits that don't exist. They're suggesting that these features improve your picture, and they don't. Not with digital signals, not with proper HDMI certification. This isn't about individual companies being evil. It's about an entire industry built on information asymmetry. They know how HDMI works. You don't. And that gap is worth billions of dollars in unnecessary cable purchases. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. You start noticing the same pattern everywhere. Monster cables, Audio Quest, any premium cable brand. They're all selling the same thing at wildly different prices. Let me tell you about David. David used to work in electronics retail. His store had a major push on premium cables. Management told him to always recommend the expensive options. Attach rate, they called it. For every TV sold, sell a premium cable. David's commission depended on it. So David would tell customers that cheap cables couldn't handle 4K properly, that they'd see compression artifacts, that colors wouldn't be as vibrant. He'd demonstrate by showing them the display TV connected with a premium cable. Of course, it looked good. It was a display model. But David would imply that a cheap cable would look worse. It wouldn't. But customers didn't know that. David sold hundreds of overpriced cables this way before he quit the job. Now compare that to Jennifer. Jennifer's building her home theater. She's a software engineer. She understands how digital signals work. She knows about the cliff effect. She goes to Monoprice and buys certified HDMI cables for $6 each. She needs 5 cables, $30 total. Her system looks absolutely perfect. She saved probably $200 compared to what retail stores wanted to charge her. Jennifer's not smarter than David's customers. She's not more capable. She just understood one key thing. Digital signals are binary. And once you understand that, the entire premium cable market makes no sense. You're either transmitting the data or you're not. Price doesn't change that equation. Here's what most people don't realize about the cable industry. The markup on premium cables is insane. We're talking 70 to 90% profit margins. An HDMI cable costs maybe $2 to $5 to manufacture. Sell it for $80? That's almost all profit. Compare that to TVs, where margins are razor thin, 10% maybe. The store makes way more money selling you a cable than selling you the TV. So what's really going on here? It's not that expensive cables are worse. They're not. They're just not better. Not in any way that matters for digital transmission. You're paying for brand names, fancy packaging, marketing budgets, gold plating that prevents corrosion you'll never experience. But you're not paying for better picture quality, because better doesn't exist with digital signals. It's binary, working or broken, perfect or failed. The people who understand this save hundreds of dollars over their lifetime on cables. They don't have special knowledge, they don't need engineering degrees, they just understand this one thing. They understand that digital transmission doesn't work like analog transmission, and that changes everything about how you should buy cables. It's not actually about being cheap or cutting corners, it's about recognizing that you're not smarter than the HDMI specification. These standards are designed by engineers who know exactly what's required for signal integrity, and they set minimum requirements. If a cable meets those requirements, it works. If it exceeds them, it still just works. There's no super works, no ultra works, just works or doesn't work. So what's really going on here? It's not that cables used to matter and suddenly don't. It's that analog and digital are fundamentally different technologies. With analog, you were transmitting continuous waveforms. Interference could distort those waveforms. Better shielding helped, better conductors helped. Quality existed on a spectrum. But digital changed everything. Now we're transmitting discrete packets of data. Those packets either arrive intact or they're detected as corrupted and resent. There's error checking, handshaking. The whole system is designed to guarantee perfect transmission. And it works, even with cheap cables. Because the engineers who designed HDMI knew that cables would vary in quality, so they built in massive tolerance. These patterns aren't personal failures. They're predictable psychology. Expensive equals better is a heuristic that works in lots of contexts. Wine, hotels, cars. But it completely breaks down with commodity digital cables. The expensive wine might actually taste better. The expensive cable transmits the exact same ones and zeros. The technology is fundamentally different, but our purchasing habits haven't caught up. But now that you understand how digital signals work, you can see the situation clearly. Every time you buy a cable, ask yourself, is this certified for the standard I need? That's it. That's the only question. Not what brand, not what price, not what features they claim, just, does it meet the HDMI specification for what I'm doing? So here's what we've uncovered. Digital signals are binary, they work perfectly or fail completely. There's no middle ground where expensive cables work better. The cliff effect means quality doesn't degrade gradually like analog. It's all or nothing. Gold plating prevents corrosion but doesn't improve signal transmission at all. The marketing around premium cables exploits lack of technical knowledge to sell unnecessary features. And the HDMI specification guarantees that any certified cable delivers perfect transmission. Think about everything we just explored. The digital absolute that makes quality a binary choice. The cliff effect that eliminates the concept of better cables. The specification illusion that makes you pay for features you already have. All of this connects to one simple truth. Your TV doesn't care about your cable's price tag. It only cares about the data. The question isn't whether expensive cables are worth it. The question is whether you'll recognize marketing manipulation when you see it. Because now you know what's really happening when they show you that premium cable. You know it's the same data. You know digital doesn't work like analog. You can't unknow it. So next time you're standing in that store staring at cable options, ask yourself this. Am I paying for actual functionality? Or am I paying for gold-plated marketing? Because once you understand how HDMI actually works, spending $80 on a cable stops making sense. It starts looking like exactly what it is, unnecessary. Your wallet will thank you, your TV will look exactly the same, your movies will stream perfectly, and you'll finally stop falling for one of electronics retail's oldest tricks.